seems hard to believe that judges want to try and stop us from looking for corruption, especially when we found hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. And we want to weed out the corruption. And it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's a very serious, I think it's a very serious violation. I'll ask Elon Musk to say a few words, and we'll take some questions. Elon, go ahead.
Sure. So at a high level, if you say, what is the goal of Doge, and I think a significant part of the presidency is to restore democracy. This may seem like, well, aren't we in a democracy? Well, if you don't have a feedback loop, okay, we would have to, if you sorry. So, I tell you, gravitas can be difficult sometimes. If there's not a good feedback loop from the people to the government, and if you have rule of the bureaucrat, if the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have? If the people cannot vote and have their will be decided by their elected representatives in the form of the president and the Senate and the House, then we don't live in a democracy, we live in a bureaucracy. So it's incredibly important that we close that feedback loop, we fix that feedback loop, and that the public's elected representatives, the president, the House, and the Senate, decide what happens, as opposed to a large unelected bureaucracy. This is not to say that there aren't some good, there are good people who are in the federal bureaucracy, but you can't have an autonomous federal bureaucracy. You have to have one that is responsive to the people. That's the whole point of a democracy. And if you looked at this, if you looked at the founders today and said, what do you think of the way things have turned out? Well, we have this unelected, fourth unconstitutional branch of government, which is the bureaucracy, which has, in a lot of ways, currently more power than any elected representative. And this is not something that people want, and it does not match the will of the people. So it's just something we've got to fix. And then we've also got to address the deficit. So we've got a $2 trillion deficit, and if we don't do something about this deficit, the country's going bankrupt. I mean, it's really astounding that the interest payments alone on the national debt exceed the Defense Department budget, which is shocking, because we spend a lot of money on defense. But if that just keeps going, we're essentially going to bankrupt the country. So what I really want to say is, like, it's not optional for us to reduce the federal expenses. It's essential. It's essential for America to remain solvent as a country.
We're going to interrupt this pablum to fact check it a little bit. One, irony died while he was talking. The only unelected party in any of this is Elon Musk. Andrew Nassios, who was the administrator of USAID, a lifelong Republican and self-described hardline conservative, said it took 1 month to turn the mission of USAID in the direction of a hard-right conservative agenda from the Clinton years. So the idea that the bureaucracy, as Elon Musk is describing, isn't responsive to the policymaker is destroyed by the fact pattern as testified to by Democratic and Republican cabinet officials. But there you have it. The co-president speaking much longer and in far greater detail than the president, drawing into serious question, who's in charge?
Well, let's say it ain't we the people, because I think what they've just forgotten, that long litany of misinformation and disinformation, which is just my real nice way of saying lies. There was a whole bunch of lying in there, starting with Donald Trump acting like a judge in the Doge case was not protecting the rights of ordinary people, which is what that case was about, right? It was actually about our rights. Every last one of us that has Social Security numbers in that data, when Elon Musk had his employees go in and seize data, that's our data. So this whole thing and this question about elections, you already pointed out the big irony, but the other point of this is it's actually the courts are actually created through the Constitution. So it is a an estate in the separation of powers, and it is there to protect us against the kind of overreach and lawlessness we have been watching unfold for the past 3 weeks. And for Elon Musk to call for the impeachment, which he has, of this judge who was following the law, is really to say, unless you do our bidding, we will suggest we should come for your job, even though you are supposed to be independent from us, and that is the balance of power. And I just have to, there's one other point, which is so critical, is for them to actually be saying this now, when guess what the will of the people wasn't? The will of the people was not the Supreme Court's overturning Roe v. Wade and saying we couldn't have rights to decide when and how we start a family. That was not the will of the people, but yet I didn't see or hear any of this about the judiciary when we got that ruling from the Supreme Court.
Let me just ask, is he still talking?
Then when you understand that, then it makes sense.
Is Donald Trump, he's still talking, I'm told. Is Donald Trump still just listening to Elon Musk talk? Donald Trump is still, right now, listening to Elon Musk talk. So, Glenn Thrush, as a longtime watcher of Donald Trump and of politics in general, have you ever seen Donald Trump watch someone talk instead of him at an event for this long?
The look you're seeing right there is the Trump looking at the kid mowing the lawn look, Nicole. Look right there.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what people don't really get is like the one group of people that Trump has typically over the course of his career been fairly deferential to are bankers. He has an enormous amount of respect for people who have accumulated a lot of money. He understands money power. And so the one person that he is less likely to sort of challenge, and this is why when people are like, when is he going to get tired of him? I think it's going to be a lot longer than people expect because Trump knows how much money that this man has. The other thing that's just kind of remarkable about this, apart from this being sort of like this 45-second civics lesson, is we do have a feedback loop. It's called Article 1 of the Constitution, and it created the Congress. Congress has the power of the purse, raises taxes, makes fiscal decisions, creates budget bills. We're seeing that awful, terrible process playing out right now in the House, and it will ultimately get resolved. And various players have leverage. That is the way this democracy is put together. Now, the alternate model here, and I think what people are failing to sort of understand necessarily, this is not about efficiency and corruption. Doge and Musk's folks are coders. This isn't the General Accounting Office. They're not doing a rational assessment of where the money ought to be spent. And as we know, budgets are moral documents. These are decisions made by representatives about how the government's going to spend its money. No, this is about shrinking radically domestic spending, because we notice Doge hasn't really gone fulsomely after military spending, but this is about domestic or discretionary international spending on programs that Democrats and liberals have established over the years. So this is about destruction of an entire idea of government, about the communality of public spending and government being a tool to address inequities, both racially, economically, and societally. Now, elections do have consequences, but we have never seen anything like this. An individual who is coming from the private space, who presumably wants to take some of these functions and privatize them, perhaps for his own to his own ultimate economic advantage.
I mean, Glenn, two things come to mind. I mean, one, you've now got the Republicans and the MAGA movement in the position of defending the acronyms. I mean, every Republican has to defend Doge. What's Doge? Why do I care about Doge? Why does Doge have all the power? But two, what you just said, they didn't go in with forensic accountants, which would have been I mean, there's some of Musk's rhetoric that I imagine does resonate beyond the right, and that is creating efficiencies inside the bureaucracy. But what people don't understand about the bureaucracy is they hunger for that. They hunger for direction. Every 4 years, especially when the White House changes parties, they await their new blueprint. That's not what Elon Musk is doing. He didn't go in with a single forensic account that I've seen reported in your publication or ours. He went in with coders, with really controversial online footprints, without any budgetary experience, without any accounting experience. And they pursued everyone's personal information. Do we know, or was anyone able to ascertain why?
Again, we're in terra incognita. We don't even know who a lot of these people are. We don't know how many of these folks are embedded into the government. I will tell you, having covered the transition, there was a much different idea of how DOGE was going to function. The sense was that it was going to create sort of this second bureaucracy that was going to be watching, almost like an additional IG embedded. No one expected them to sort of head towards the nexus of power. And you have to hand it to Musk. Musk understands power. He knows where the wall socket is and how to pull out a plug. That he is completely aware of in a way that I think a lot of the people who oppose him aren't. He sees this entire system in this country from a power perspective. Trump does as well, but Musk has a real genius for figuring out how to turn off the surge protector for the U.S. government. But it does not necessarily have to do with an assessment of any given program, because if you look, I've read tons of GAO reports and sat through a lot of boring congressional hearings, and really where you really catch the savings, apart from kind of the healthcare sector, and there's not a huge will at the moment congressionally to examine that in a really rapacious way, is defense spending. And he hasn't gone near that. If you were serious about really cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, you should start with the Pentagon. But he hasn't.
And listen, entitlements and defense are the big drivers of the size of the budget. And instead, their stated intent is to traumatize the workforce of agencies like USAID, which the only thing I would differ with Glenn on is Republicans have enthusiastically boosted the budgets of USAID as well. I think the application of USAID programs to help fight terrorism all exploded under George W. Bush.